I was fastening my seatbelt for what I thought would be a routine charter flight over the Arctic when I noticed something strange about the passenger manifest lying on the seat beside me. There were 8 names printed on the list, but only 7 of us had boarded the plane. The 8th name, written in faded ink at the bottom, read, "Passenger unknown seat 12A." I glanced back at row 12. Seat 12A was empty, but there was a jacket draped over it, and beneath the seat sat a worn leather bag that none of us had brought aboard. The pilot announced our departure, and as we began to taxi down the runway, I could have sworn I saw the jacket shift slightly, as if someone had just settled into that seat. Nobody else seemed to notice. My name is Tucker, and I am 28 years old. I want to tell you about what happened to us in the Arctic, but before I do, I need you to understand something important. What we experienced out there on the ice challenged everything I thought I knew about the world. If you are someone who values the truth, someone who wants to hear a story that will stay with you long after you finish listening, then I am asking you to do something for me right now. Leave a comment below and tell me whether you believe some places on Earth can hold memories, or if you think the cold can preserve more than just bodies. Your answers might help me make sense of what I saw. The flight was supposed to be simple. I worked as a logistics coordinator for a research supply company based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and this trip was meant to deliver equipment to a remote weather station near the North Slope. There were 7 of us on that charter plane. Myself, the pilot named Raymond, who was 53 and had flown Arctic routes for 30 years, a co-pilot named Jessica, who was 31, 2 engineers named Daniel and Kevin, who were in their 40s, a medical officer named Dr. Patricia Hollies, who was 46, and a graduate student named Amy, who was 24 and researching climate patterns. We took off from Anchorage at 6:00 a.m. on a gray October morning. The weather forecast predicted clear skies for most of the journey, with possible light snow near our destination. Raymond had made this flight dozens of times before, and he assured us we would land at the weather station by 11:00 a.m., drop off the supplies, and return to Anchorage before dinner. For the first 3 hours, everything went exactly as planned. I spent most of the time reviewing inventory lists and making notes on my laptop. Amy sat across from me, reading through research papers and occasionally looking out the window at the endless white landscape below. Daniel and Kevin played cards in the back of the cabin. Dr. Hollies dozed with a medical journal open on her lap. Jessica remained in the cockpit with Raymond, monitoring instruments and radio communications. At 9:15 a.m., Raymond's voice came over the intercom. "Folks, we have got a minor situation up here. Nothing to worry about, but we are experiencing some unusual instrument readings. We are going to descend to a lower altitude to get a better look at our position." I felt the plane dip slightly as we began to descend. Amy looked up from her papers with concern in her eyes. "Is that normal?" she asked. "Raymond knows what he is doing," I said, though I felt a small knot forming in my stomach. "He has been flying these routes forever." 10 minutes later, Raymond's voice returned, and this time there was an edge to it that I had not heard before. "We have lost GPS signal. Radio is not working either. Jessica is trying to reboot the systems now. Everyone stay calm and keep your seatbelts fastened." The plane began to shake. At first, it was just a gentle vibration, but within seconds it turned into violent turbulence that threw us against our restraints. Dr. Hollies woke with a startled cry. Daniel's cards scattered across the floor. Amy grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my jacket. "What is happening?" Kevin shouted from the back. The lights in the cabin flickered. Through the windows, I saw something impossible. The clear morning sky had vanished, replaced by a wall of swirling darkness that seemed to wrap around the plane like a living thing. It was not a normal storm. The clouds moved with purpose, rotating around us in patterns that defied natural weather systems. Raymond came back on the intercom, and for the first time I heard fear in his voice. "Brace for impact. I repeat, brace for impact. We are going down." The next 60 seconds felt like an eternity. The plane dropped, then rose sharply, then dropped again. Oxygen masks fell from the overhead compartments. Someone was screaming. The engines made a horrible grinding sound. Through the window, I saw the white ground rushing up to meet us at a terrifying speed. Then everything went black. I woke to the smell of burning metal and the sound of wind howling through torn aluminum. My head throbbed, and when I touched my forehead, my fingers came away sticky with blood. I was still strapped in my seat, but the seat was no longer attached to the floor. It had been thrown several feet from where I remembered sitting. The cabin was destroyed. The entire front section had been ripped away, and through the jagged opening, I could see nothing but white emptiness. Snow was already beginning to pile up inside the wreckage. Sparks flew from exposed wires in the ceiling. Papers and equipment were scattered everywhere. "Is anyone alive?" I called out, my voice hoarse. A groan came from nearby. I turned and saw Dr. Hollis pulling herself out from under a collapsed overhead bin. Blood ran from a cut above her eye, but she was moving. "I am okay," she said. "Check the others." I unclipped my seatbelt and tried to stand, but my right leg gave out beneath me. Pain shot through my ankle. Broken or sprained, I could not tell, but I forced myself to keep moving. Amy was unconscious but breathing, slumped in her seat with her head against the window. Daniel was helping Kevin to his feet. Both of them looked dazed but not seriously injured. "Raymond, Jessica," I shouted toward the cockpit. There was no response. The cockpit door hung open, twisted on its hinges. I limped toward it, using the seats for support. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. The entire front of the plane was gone. The cockpit had been sheared off completely, leaving nothing but a jagged edge of metal and a drop into the snow below. Raymond and Jessica were simply not there anymore. Whether they had been thrown from the plane on impact or buried somewhere in the snow, I did not know. But they were gone. I turned back to the others, my hands shaking. "The pilots are dead," I said quietly. Dr. Hollis closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Then we need to focus on survival. Daniel, Kevin, check the cargo area for emergency supplies. Tucker, help me wake Amy and assess injuries." For the next hour, we worked in a state of controlled panic. Dr. Hollis woke Amy and checked her for concussion symptoms. I helped Daniel and Kevin search through the wreckage for anything useful. We found 3 emergency blankets, a first aid kit, 2 flashlights, some flares, and a survival radio that Daniel said might work if we could get it powered up properly. We also found our cargo of supplies meant for the weather station: food rations, portable heaters, fuel cells, and weather monitoring equipment. The temperature inside the cabin was dropping fast. Without the front section of the plane to block the wind, we were essentially sitting in a metal cave open to the Arctic elements. Kevin, who had engineering training, managed to get one of the portable heaters working using a fuel cell from our cargo. The small orange glow it produced was pitifully inadequate against the cold, but it was better than nothing. "We need to seal off the front," Daniel said, his breath coming out in white puffs. "Use cargo tarps, anything we can find. Otherwise, we will freeze before anyone finds us." "Will anyone find us?" Amy asked, her voice small and frightened. "Raymond said the radio was not working before we crashed." "The plane has an emergency locator beacon," I said, though I was not sure if I believed it myself. "It activates automatically in a crash. Search and rescue will be looking for us." Dr. Hollis was examining the first aid kit, taking inventory of what we had. "We have enough medical supplies to treat minor injuries, but that is all. If someone develops hypothermia or frostbite, our options will be limited." As we worked to seal the opening with tarps and cargo netting, I kept looking out at the landscape beyond the wreckage. We had crashed on what appeared to be a flat expanse of ice and snow, stretching endlessly in every direction. The sky was a uniform gray, making it impossible to tell where the ground ended and the air began. Visibility was perhaps 100 feet before everything dissolved into white nothingness. There were no landmarks, no mountains, no rocks, no indication of which direction we should go if we tried to walk out, just emptiness. "Has anyone noticed how quiet it is?" Kevin said suddenly. We all stopped what we were doing and listened. He was right. Beyond the wind, there was no sound at all. No birds, no crackling of ice, nothing but the low moan of air moving across the frozen landscape. "We are in the middle of the Arctic," Daniel said. "What did you expect, traffic noise?" "No, I mean," Kevin trailed off frowning, "never mind." We finished sealing the front as best we could and huddled around the portable heater. Dr. Holly's distributed energy bars from the survival supplies, and we ate in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts about how badly things had gone wrong. It was 2:00 p.m. when we heard the first sound. At first, I thought it was just the wind changing direction, a low, rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from somewhere outside the plane. But as we listened, the sound grew clearer. It was not wind, it was footsteps. Someone was walking around the wreckage. "Hello," I called out, hope surging in my chest. "Is someone there? We need help." The footsteps stopped. We waited, barely breathing. For a long moment there was only silence. Then the footsteps resumed, slowly circling the plane. They moved from the left side to the right, steady and deliberate. "Maybe it is a rescue team," Amy whispered. "Already?" Dr. Holly shook her head. "We have only been down a few hours. They could not have found us this fast, not in this weather." Daniel moved toward the sealed opening, preparing to pull back the tarp. "I will check." "Wait," Kevin grabbed his arm. "What if it is not a rescue team?" "Then what is it?" Daniel asked. "A polar bear." "Polar bears do not walk like that," Kevin said. "Those footsteps sounded human." I limped over to join them at the opening. Together, Daniel and I carefully pulled back a corner of the tarp, letting in a blast of freezing air. We peered out into the gray-white landscape. There was nothing there. The snow around the plane was undisturbed except for the furrows created by our crash. No footprints, no figures, no sign of any living thing. "I know I heard it," Kevin said. "We all heard it." "Maybe it was debris shifting," Dr. Holly suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. "The plane is not structurally stable. Parts could be settling." We resealed the opening and returned to the heater, but the easy fear we had managed to keep at bay suddenly felt much closer. I found myself listening intently to every small sound, trying to distinguish between the innocent creaks of twisted metal and something more deliberate. As the hours passed and daylight began to fade, we took turns trying to get the survival radio working. Daniel, who had the most technical knowledge, worked on it for over an hour before admitting defeat. "The antenna is damaged," he said. "Without proper tools, I cannot fix it." "So we wait," Dr. Holly said. "We conserve our resources, stay warm, and wait for rescue." "How long?" Amy asked. "How long can we survive out here?" Nobody wanted to answer that question. At 6:00 p.m., full darkness arrived. The Arctic night was absolute, a blackness so complete that it felt like a physical presence pressing against the plane. We used the flashlights sparingly, knowing the batteries would not last forever. The portable heater continued to glow, casting dancing shadows on the torn walls of the cabin. That was when we heard it again, the footsteps. This time they were unmistakable. They walked slowly around the perimeter of the plane, circling us like a predator circling wounded prey. We sat in frozen silence, listening to the steady crunch, crunch, crunch of feet on snow. "This is not debris," Kevin said flatly. "Something is out there." Daniel grabbed one of the flashlights and stood up. "I am going to find out what." "Do not be stupid," Dr. Hollis hissed. "We do not know what is out there." "Exactly," Daniel said. "And I am not going to sit here in the dark wondering. If it is an animal, we need to scare it off. If it is a person, we need their help." Before anyone could stop him, Daniel pulled back the tarp and climbed out through the opening. The flashlight beam swept across the snow, and I could see his silhouette as he moved away from the plane. "Hello," Daniel called out. "Who is there? Show yourself." His voice echoed across the emptiness and faded to nothing. The footsteps had stopped again. For several seconds, Daniel stood there, sweeping his flashlight back and forth. Then he turned back toward us. "There is nothing out here, no tracks except mine. Whatever we heard, it is." He stopped mid-sentence. His flashlight was pointed at something in the snow about 20 feet from the plane. From inside the cabin, I could not see what he was looking at, but I saw his body go rigid. "Daniel," I called. "What is it?" He did not answer. He just stood there, flashlight fixed on that one spot, his breath coming out in rapid white clouds. "Daniel, come back inside," Dr. Holly shouted. Slowly, Daniel backed toward the plane, his eyes never leaving whatever he had seen. When he climbed back inside, his face was pale, and his hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the flashlight. "What did you see?" Kevin demanded. Daniel swallowed hard. "There is a body out there, frozen in the ice, but that is not the strangest part. The body is wearing a flight uniform, old style like from the 1950s, and there is a name tag on the jacket." "What name?" I asked, though part of me did not want to know. "Captain William Thorne," Daniel said quietly. "And next to him, half buried in the snow, there is a piece of wreckage. It looks like part of a plane tail. I could see numbers on it. Military designation. From 1952. We stared at him in silence, trying to process what he was saying. "That is impossible," Amy whispered. "We are in the middle of nowhere. How could there be wreckage from 1952 just sitting here?" "I do not know," Daniel said, "but it is there. I saw it." Dr. Hollis rubbed her temples. "Even if there was a crash here 70 years ago, what does that have to do with the footsteps we heard?" Nobody had an answer for that. We spent the rest of the night in terrified wakefulness, taking turns keeping watch while others tried to sleep. The footsteps came 3 more times, once at 9:00 p.m., once at midnight, and once at 3:00 a.m. Each time they circled the plane slowly, methodically, and each time there was nothing visible outside when we looked. At one point during the darkest hours of the night, I found myself staring at the sealed opening, listening to those impossible footsteps, and I remembered something my grandmother used to say. She had been from a small town in rural Montana, and she believed that some places held onto the past more tightly than others. She believed that traumatic events could leave impressions on a location like photographs burned into film. "The land remembers," she used to tell me, "especially the cold places. The cold preserves everything." I had always dismissed her stories as superstition, but now, sitting in a wrecked plane in the Arctic, listening to the footsteps of something that should not exist, I was not so sure anymore. If you are still listening to this story, if you have made it this far with me, I want to ask you to do something. Take a moment right now and hit that like button. Share this with someone who appreciates true stories about unexplainable experiences. And make sure you are subscribed, because what I am about to tell you about the second day is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about what is possible. When morning finally arrived at 8:00 a.m., the gray light filtering through the tarp was almost a relief. Darkness makes fear grow stronger, but daylight gave us back some measure of control, or at least the illusion of it. Dr. Hollis checked everyone for signs of hypothermia or frostbite. Miraculously, we were all in relatively good condition, though my ankle had swollen to twice its normal size, and Amy was showing signs of mild shock. We ate a meager breakfast of protein bars and melted snow that we heated over the portable heater. "We need to make a decision," Kevin said. "Do we stay with the plane and wait for rescue, or do we try to reach the weather station?" "We have no idea where we are," Dr. Hollis pointed out. "We could walk in circles for days and freeze to death." Or we could stay here and freeze to death, Kevin countered. That heater is not going to keep us alive indefinitely. We have maybe 3 or 4 days of fuel at most. Raymond was following a flight plan, I said. Search and rescue will be looking along that route. Our best chance is to stay with the plane where we are more visible. Daniel had been quiet throughout this discussion, staring at the sealed opening. Finally, he spoke. I want to go back out there, to the body I found. Maybe there is something that can help us understand where we are. What good will that do? Amy asked. That plane crashed here for a reason, Daniel said. Maybe if we understand what happened to them, we will understand what happened to us. It was a thin logic, but none of us had anything better. So at 10:00 a.m., 4 of us, Daniel, Kevin, Dr. Hollies, and myself, ventured outside while Amy stayed behind to monitor the radio in case it suddenly started working. The cold was immediate and brutal. Even with our winter gear, the Arctic air felt like knives against exposed skin. The wind had picked up, blowing snow and shifting curtains across the landscape. Visibility was down to maybe 50 feet. Daniel led us to where he had seen the body. It took us several minutes to find it because the wind had partially covered it with fresh snow, but eventually we cleared away enough to see what Daniel had described. Captain William Thorne was indeed frozen in the ice. His body was remarkably preserved, his face still visible through a thin layer of frost. He had been a young man, maybe 30 years old, with short dark hair and a strong jawline. His eyes were open, staring up at the gray sky with an expression of absolute terror frozen on his face. His flight uniform was torn and bloody. His right arm was bent at an unnatural angle, and around his neck, hanging from a chain, was a set of dog tags that confirmed his identity and the date, 1952. Near him, half buried in the snow, was a section of aircraft fuselage. The metal was old and corroded, but I could still make out military markings and a serial number. Whatever plane this had belonged to, it had been a military transport of some kind. How is this possible? Kevin said, his voice muffled by his scarf. Bodies do not just lie around in the Arctic for 70 years without being buried or discovered. Dr. Hollies knelt beside the body, her medical training overriding her fear. The preservation is remarkable. The cold would explain it, but something is wrong. Look at the position of the body. I looked closer and saw what she meant. Captain Thorne was not lying down as if he had fallen or died in the crash. He was standing upright, frozen in a position as if he had been walking when death took him. The ice around his legs suggested he had been trapped there, unable to move, unable to escape. He froze to death standing up, Dr. Hollies said quietly. But that should not be possible. Even in extreme cold, a person would collapse before freezing solid. Daniel was examining the piece of fuselage. There is something written here, carved into the metal. He brushed away more snow. It is hard to read, but it looks like a warning. We gathered around as Daniel cleared the ice from a section of metal. Someone had indeed carved words into the aluminum. Crude letters scratched with something sharp. Do not stay after dark. It walks when the sun sets. If you hear FOOTSTEPS, do not look. If it speaks, do not answer. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. What the hell does that mean? Kevin said. Before anyone could answer, we heard a sound from back toward our plane. Amy was screaming. We ran as fast as we could through the snow, my injured ankle screaming with every step. When we reached the plane and climbed back inside, we found Amy pressed against the far wall, her face white with terror. It was here, she gasped. Something was here. What was here? Dr. Hollies asked, gripping Amy's shoulders. Do not know. I was sitting by the heater trying to stay warm when I heard something moving in the back of the cabin, like someone searching through the cargo. I called out thinking maybe one of you had come back, but nobody answered. Then I saw, she stopped, struggling to find words. I saw a shadow, a person-shaped shadow moving in the back near the supplies. But when I shined the flashlight on it, there was nothing there, just empty space. But I could still hear it moving, Tucker. I could hear breathing. We searched the entire cabin. Every corner, every space behind cargo containers, every possible hiding place. There was nothing. No intruder, no animal, no explanation for what Amy had experienced. But as we searched, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the floor near where Amy had been sitting, there were wet footprints. Not from any of us. We had all been outside. These footprints were different, smaller, and they led from the sealed opening toward the back of the plane, then simply stopped in the middle of the floor as if whoever made them had simply vanished into thin air. The water from the melted snow in those footprints was already starting to refreeze in the cold air. "Okay," Kevin said, his voice shaking. "Okay, we need to talk about what is happening here. Really talk about it." We gathered around the heater, and for the first time, we admitted our fear out loud. "There is something out there," Daniel said. "Something that walks around at night, something connected to that old crash." "You are talking about a ghost," Amy said. "You are saying we are being haunted by the crew of that 1952 plane." "I am saying something is not right about this place," Daniel replied. "That body, the warnings carved into the metal, the footsteps we have been hearing. This is not just a survival situation anymore." Dr. Hollis, who I had assumed would be the voice of reason, surprised us all by nodding. "I have been a doctor for 23 years. I have seen a lot of things that I cannot explain. I have had patients tell me about experiences that do not fit into our understanding of reality. I have always tried to find rational explanations, but sometimes—" She paused, looking at each of us. "Sometimes there are not any rational explanations." "So what do we do?" I asked. "The warning on the fuselage said not to stay after dark, but where are we supposed to go? We do not even know where we are." "Maybe that is not what the warning meant," Kevin said slowly. "Maybe it meant do not be outside after dark. Maybe inside the plane we are safe." "Amy was just attacked inside the plane," Daniel pointed out. "Was she attacked?" Kevin asked. "Or was something just letting her know it is here?" It was a terrifying distinction. We spent the rest of the day preparing for nightfall. We reinforced the sealed opening, making sure there were no gaps where anything could enter. We organized our supplies so we could grab them quickly if we needed to move. We tested the flares, making sure they would work if we needed to signal for help or scare off whatever was out there. And we discussed what we would do if rescue did not come. At 4:00 p.m., as the gray light began to fade, Daniel made a suggestion that terrified and intrigued me in equal measure. "I want to go back out there," he said. "Before it gets fully dark, I want to check if there are more pieces of that crashed plane. Maybe there is something that can help us, like a working radio or maps that show our location." "That is insane," Dr. Hollis said. "We should stay together, stay inside." "And what?" Daniel asked. "Wait for whatever is out there to pick us off one by one? Or wait until we run out of fuel and freeze to death? At least if I find something useful, we might have a chance." I understood his logic, but I also understood the risk. "If you go," I said, "you do not go alone. I will come with you." "Your ankle is injured," Daniel protested. "Which is exactly why I should go," I said. "If something happens, I am the weakest link anyway. Better to risk me than someone who is at full strength." It was dark logic, but dark logic was all we had left. So at 4:30 p.m., with less than an hour before full darkness, Daniel and I suited up and headed back out into the Arctic waste. We each carried a flashlight, a flare, and a crude weapon we had fashioned from a piece of metal debris. The wind had died down, which somehow made things worse. In the silence, every sound was amplified. The crunch of our boots on snow, our breathing inside our scarves, the distant creaking of ice shifting somewhere in the darkness. We found the frozen body of Captain Thorne exactly where we had left him, his eyes still staring at nothing. Daniel swept his flashlight across the surrounding area, looking for more wreckage. "There," he said, pointing to a dark shape about 30 feet away. We approached carefully. It was another section of the crashed plane, this one larger, part of the fuselage with the door still attached. The door hung open, creating a dark rectangular opening into the wreckage. "Should we go inside?" I asked, though every instinct I had screamed not to. Daniel checked his watch. "We have 40 minutes before full dark. Let us make it quick." We climbed into the wreckage. Our flashlights revealed a scene of devastation frozen in time. Seats were torn from their mountings. Personal belongings, books, photographs, letters, were scattered everywhere, preserved by the cold. And there were more bodies. 5 of them scattered throughout the cabin, all frozen in the same standing position as Captain Thorne, all wearing the same expression of absolute terror. "They did not die in the crash," Daniel whispered. "They survived it, and then something killed them after." On the wall of the cabin, more carved words. "It came on the second night. It spoke with the voices of our dead. It PROMISED 2 guide US home if we FOLLOWED. Jackson FOLLOWED. We heard HIM screaming for HOURS but could not find HIM. It brought HIM back at dawn. He was not the same. He had seen something. He would not speak. He just stared." And below that, in different handwriting, "If you find this, do not trust what you see. Do not trust what you hear. The ice holds MEMORIES. The darkness gives them form." My hands were shaking as I read the words. "Daniel, we need to leave, now." But Daniel had found something else. A metal case, military issue, with a lock that had corroded away. He opened it carefully. Inside was a journal, leather-bound and remarkably well-preserved. "This belonged to Captain Thorne," Daniel said, examining the name written inside the front cover. "He documented everything." "We can read it back at our plane," I said urgently. "We need to go." Daniel nodded and tucked the journal inside his jacket. We turned to leave. That was when we heard it, a voice calling from somewhere outside the wreckage. "Tucker, Daniel, is that you? Thank God I found you." It was Raymond's voice, our pilot, the man who had been ripped from the cockpit when we crashed, whose body we had assumed was lost or destroyed. Daniel and I looked at each other, the warning from the wall echoing in our minds. "Do not trust what you hear." "Tucker, Daniel, please." The voice came again, closer now. "I have been looking for you. I found a shelter. We can survive here. Come out, please." Every fiber of my being wanted to respond, to call out to Raymond, to believe that somehow he had survived and found help. But I remembered the warnings carved into metal by dying men. "It is not him," I whispered to Daniel. "It cannot be him." "Tucker," the voice was right outside now. "I can see your flashlights. Why are you hiding? Come out. We do not have much time before dark." Daniel grabbed my arm. "The back of the fuselage. There might be another way out." We moved as quietly as we could toward the rear of the wrecked plane, our flashlights off, navigating by feel and the dim gray light coming through cracks in the metal. "Tucker," the voice was different now, angry. "Why will you not answer me? I am your pilot. I am trying to save you." We found a tier in the rear fuselage large enough to squeeze through. As we climbed out, I made the mistake of looking back. Standing in the doorway of the wreck was a figure. It had Raymond's general shape, his size, his posture, but something was wrong with it. The proportions were slightly off, like a sculpture made by someone who had only heard a description of a human being. And its face, I only glimpsed it for a second in the dying light, but it was enough. It was not a face. It was a smooth, blank space where a face should be, but it spoke with Raymond's voice. "Tucker, why are you running?" We ran. The snow grabbed at our feet. My injured ankle felt like it was on fire. Behind us, we could hear the thing that was not Raymond following, its footsteps steady and unhurried. Our plane appeared out of the gloom. "Help!" I screamed. "Open the tarp." Kevin's face appeared at the opening, and he pulled back the tarp just enough for us to dive through. We tumbled inside, and he immediately resealed the opening behind us. "What happened?" Dr. Hollies demanded. "We heard you screaming." "It is out there," Daniel gasped, struggling to catch his breath. "It can take shapes. It tried to look like Raymond." "Raymond is here?" Amy asked hopefully. "No," I said firmly. "Raymond is dead. That thing outside just looks like him." We told them everything we had seen, the additional wreckage, the bodies, the warnings, the journal, and the thing that had worn Raymond's shape. As we spoke, we could hear it outside, circling the plane again. But this time, it was not just making footsteps. It was talking. It used Raymond's voice. "Tucker, please let me in. I am hurt. I am cold." Then Jessica's voice. "Can anyone hear me? I am trapped in the snow. Please help me." Then, most horrible of all, it used our own voices. I heard myself screaming for help. I heard Dr. Hollies begging to be let inside. I heard Amy crying. "Do not listen," Dr. Hollies said, her voice tight with fear. "Cover your ears if you have to." Kevin had started reading Captain Thorne's journal by flashlight. As we huddled together, trying to block out the sounds from outside, he read aloud in a shaking voice. October 15, 1952. Our plane crashed 3 days ago in what we believe is somewhere near the North Pole. Of the 12 men aboard, 8 survived the impact. We have established shelter in the main fuselage and rationed our supplies. Radio is non-functional. We estimate rescue will come within a week. Morale is high. We will survive this. October 16, 1952. Last night we heard footsteps around the plane. We assumed it was an animal, perhaps a polar bear. Lieutenant Morris went to investigate. He saw nothing but reported the snow around the plane was undisturbed. No tracks. Corporal Jenkins suggested the sound was ice settling. We accepted this explanation. October 17, 1952. The footsteps came again. This time they circled the plane 3 times. Sergeant Davis swore he saw a figure moving in the darkness, but when we shined lights on it, nothing was there. Temperatures dropping, fuel for heater running low. October 18, 1952. Corporal Jackson did not return from outside. He went to check our signal fire and never came back. We searched for 6 hours, found nothing. No body, no tracks, no sign of struggle. It is as if he simply ceased to exist. Men are frightened. I am frightened. October 19, 1952. It spoke to us last night. It used Jackson's voice. It stood outside the plane and called to us, begging us to let it in. It said it was cold and needed help, but Jackson's body was with it. We could see him through the window, standing in the snow, his mouth moving, but the voice came from behind him, from something we could not see. We did not open the door. October 20, 1952. 3 more men are gone. Private Wilson, Lieutenant Morris, and Sergeant Davis. They disappeared one by one during the night, though we were all awake and watching. Wilson simply stood up, walked to the door, opened it, and stepped outside. We tried to stop him, but he would not respond to us. His eyes were open, but he was not seeing us. He was seeing something else. Morris and Davis followed hours later, the same vacant expressions on their faces. Whatever is out there, it can reach inside our minds. October 21, 1952. Only 4 of us remain. We sealed the door. We will not open it for anything. The voices continue. It uses our fallen comrades to taunt us. It tells us things only they would know. Personal details, memories, fears. How does it know these things? Corporal Henderson believes we have crashed in a cursed place. He says the old Arctic explorers spoke of regions where the boundary between worlds grows thin, where supernatural creatures prey on the lost and desperate. I told him to stop talking nonsense, but privately, I wonder if he is right. October 22, 1952. Henderson is dead, not from the cold, not from starvation. He died from fear. His heart simply stopped while he was staring out the window at something the rest of us could not see. His last words were, "It showed me what it really is. God forgive us, it showed me the truth." October 23, 1952. We are three now, Private Chen, Private Daniels, and myself. The fuel has run out. The cold is overwhelming. We can see our breath freezing in the air before it reaches our lips. Chen has suggested we make a run for it at dawn, try to reach help. I told him it is suicide. There is nothing out there but ice and whatever supernatural creature hunts us. But staying here is death too. We will freeze within days. October 24, 1952. Chen left at first light. We watched him walk into the white emptiness. He made it perhaps 300 yards before he stopped. He stood there for a long time just standing, and then he turned around. But it was not Chen anymore. We could tell even from a distance. The way he moved was wrong. He walked back toward the plane with that same vacant expression Wilson had worn. Daniels and I did not open the door. The thing that looked like Chen stood outside for an hour, knocking gently, calling our names. Then it walked away and vanished into the snow. October 25, 1952. I am alone. Daniels could not take it anymore. He slit his wrists with a piece of metal during the night. I found him this morning, frozen in a pool of his own blood. I should bury him, but I do not have the strength. I am going to die here. I know this now. The supernatural creature will not kill me. The cold will. Or perhaps I will follow Daniels into the darkness by my own hand. But before I go, I need to warn whoever finds this. If you have crashed here, if you are reading this journal, you are in danger. This place is wrong. The supernatural creature that hunts here is not an animal. It is not even a ghost in the traditional sense. It is something older, something that exists in the boundary between life and death. It feeds on despair and isolation. It can take the forms of the dead, speak with their voices, show you things that drive men mad. The old Arctic peoples knew about it. They called it by different names in different languages, but the meaning was always the same: the walker in white. The thing that comes when you are alone and afraid. The thing that promises salvation but delivers only death. If you are here, you must follow these rules. Never go outside after dark. The supernatural creature is strongest in darkness. Do not trust anything you see or hear. It will use the voices and faces of your friends, your family. Anyone it thinks will make you lower your guard. Do not look directly at it if you see it. Eye contact gives it power over your mind. Stay together. It preys on the isolated and the weak. If someone leaves and returns, do not let them back inside. They are not who they appear to be anymore. The only chance of survival is rescue. Stay with your crash site. Conserve your resources, and pray that help comes before the cold or the supernatural creature claims you. This is Captain William Thorne signing off. If you are reading this, I am sorry. I am so very sorry you have joined us in this frozen hell. Kevin's voice faded to silence. We sat in the dim glow of the portable heater, processing what we had just heard. He was right about everything, Amy whispered. The footsteps, the voices, the people leaving. It is all happening to us. But he was wrong about one thing, Dr. Holly said quietly. He said the only chance of survival is rescue. We have been here for 2 days. No rescue has come. And according to his timeline, his crew started dying on the 5th day. We might not have that long. So what do? Kevin asked. Follow his rules and hope we last longer than they did. I looked at the journal in Kevin's hands, at the desperate handwriting of a man who knew he was going to die. And suddenly, I understood something that Captain Thorne had not realized until it was too late. We have to leave, I said. We have to abandon the plane. They all stared at me as if I had lost my mind. Tucker, that is exactly what killed Thorne's crew, Daniel said. They left the plane and died. No, I said, standing up despite the pain in my ankle. They left one at a time or in small groups. The supernatural creature picked them off individually. But what if we all leave together? What if we refuse to let it separate us? Leave and go where? Dr. Hollies asked. We do not know where we are. We will freeze to death before we find help. Maybe, I admitted, but staying here guarantees death. The supernatural creature wants us to stay, It wants us to huddle here in fear, growing weaker and more desperate until we are easy prey. That is what it does. It isolates its victims and waits for them to break. But what if we refuse to play its game? You are suggesting we walk out into the Arctic wilderness with no map, no GPS, and no idea which direction to go, Kevin said. That is insane. More insane than sitting here waiting to be killed by a supernatural creature that can read our minds and imitate the dead, I countered. At least if we are moving, we are taking action. We are fighting back. Amy spoke up, her voice small but determined. I think Tucker is right. I would rather die trying to save myself than die waiting for something to kill me. We would need to travel during daylight only, Daniel said, warming to the idea. We could bring the portable heater, some food and supplies, make camp before dark each night and seal ourselves in as best we can. Dr. Holly shook her head. This is a huge risk. We have no guarantee there is anything out there to find. No weather station, no rescue base, nothing. But we know what will happen if we stay, I said. Captain Thorne spelled it out for us. One by one, the supernatural creature will get inside our heads. One by one, we will walk out into the snow, or we will turn on each other, or we will simply freeze when the fuel runs out. At least if we are moving, we have a chance. The debate continued for another hour, but in the end, fear of staying proved stronger than fear of leaving. We decided to make our attempt the next morning at first light. We would pack everything we could carry, travel as far as we could during daylight, and make shelter before darkness fell. It was a desperate plan, maybe even a suicidal one, but desperation was all we had left. That night, our last night in the crashed plane, the supernatural creature pulled out all the stops. It started at 8:00 p.m. with the voices, not just Raymond and Jessica this time. It used the voices of people from our lives. I heard my mother calling my name, begging me to come outside where it was safe. Kevin heard his wife. Daniel heard his children. Amy heard her father, who had died 2 years earlier. The psychological warfare was relentless. The supernatural creature knew exactly which emotional buttons to push, which memories to exploit. It offered us everything we wanted: warmth, safety, reunion with loved ones. All we had to do was open the door. We held firm. We covered our ears, sang songs, told stories, anything to drown out those seductive, lying voices. At 11:00 p.m., the attacks became physical. Something slammed against the outside of the plane, hard enough to make the entire structure shudder. Again and again, massive impacts that sounded like a giant fist hammering against metal. The tarp we had used to seal the front opening began to tear. "It is trying to get in," Amy screamed. We grabbed pieces of debris and held them against the tarp, desperately trying to reinforce our barrier. The impacts continued for 20 minutes, each one stronger than the last. Then, suddenly, they stopped. In the silence that followed, we heard something new. Scratching, like fingernails on metal, slowly working their way around the fuselage, testing for weak points. "It is looking for a way in," Dr. Holly said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The cargo hatch," Kevin said suddenly. "We did not seal the cargo hatch properly." We turned our flashlights toward the back of the plane. The small cargo hatch was indeed partially open, and as we watched, it began to swing wider, pushed by something on the other side. Daniel grabbed a piece of metal pipe and moved toward the hatch. "Stay back," he warned. The hatch swung fully open. For a moment there was nothing but darkness beyond. Then something reached through. An arm, pale and impossibly long, with fingers that bent in too many places. It groped blindly around the inside of the cabin, searching for something to grab onto. Daniel swung the pipe with all his strength, striking the arm. There was a sound like ice cracking, and the arm withdrew. The hatch slammed shut from the outside. "Did you hurt it?" Amy asked. "I do not know if you can hurt something like that," Daniel said, his hands shaking. "But it felt solid. Whatever it is, it has physical form." "That is good," I said, though my voice was not convinced. "If it has physical form, we can fight it if we have to." The rest of the night passed in agonizing slowness. The supernatural creature did not try to break in again, but it never left. We could hear it moving around outside, sometimes on the ground, sometimes, impossibly, on the roof of the plane. The metal above our heads would creak and groan under an invisible weight. At one point, around 3:00 a.m., all sound stopped. Complete silence fell over the Arctic waste. It was somehow worse than the attacks. In the silence, our imaginations filled in what might be happening. Was it gathering strength for another assault? Was it calling others of its kind? Or was it simply waiting, knowing that time was on its side? When morning finally arrived at 8:00 a.m., we were exhausted, terrified, and desperate to leave. We had packed our supplies into makeshift backpacks fashioned from cargo netting. Each of us carried as much as we could: food, fuel cells, the portable heater, medical supplies, flares, flashlights, and emergency blankets. We also armed ourselves with metal pipes and sharp pieces of debris, crude weapons that probably would not help much but made us feel slightly less helpless. Before we left, I took one last look around the cabin that had been our shelter for 2 days. It was a wreck, torn and twisted, but it had kept us alive. Now we were abandoning it to venture into a landscape that had killed better-equipped men than us. "Everyone ready?" I asked. They nodded, though I could see the fear in their eyes. "Remember the rules," Dr. Holly said. "We stay together no matter what. If anyone starts acting strange or suggests splitting up, we do not listen. If we see or hear anything trying to lure us away, we ignore it. And if one of us does not make it," Kevin added grimly, "the others keep going. No stopping to help, no turning back." Agreed. It was a horrible agreement to make, but a necessary one. We all understood that sentiment or loyalty could get us all killed. "Agreed," we said in unison. Daniel pulled back the tarp, and we stepped out into the Arctic morning. The landscape was exactly as hostile as I remembered. Endless white in every direction, gray sky that offered no hint of sun or direction, and a cold so profound it seemed to seep into your bones within seconds. But there was something else now, something I had not noticed before. In the distance, perhaps a mile away, I could see dark shapes rising from the snow. Not natural ice formations. These were angular, made by human hands. "Do you see that?" I pointed. "Buildings," Amy said hopefully. "Could it be the weather station?" "It is in the wrong direction," Daniel said, checking the compass he had salvaged from the cockpit. "The weather station should be north. Those structures are east." "But they are something," Kevin said. "Maybe another research base or an old military installation. It is better than nothing." We had no better option. We set out toward the structures, moving as quickly as the terrain and my injured ankle allowed. The snow was deep in places, sometimes rising to our knees, forcing us to help each other through the worst drifts. Behind us, I could feel the presence of the supernatural creature. I never looked back, but I knew it was there, watching us leave, waiting to see what we would do. The first hour of walking was grueling. The cold sapped our strength, and the endless white sameness of the landscape played tricks on our perception. Sometimes the dark structures seemed closer, almost within reach. Other times they seemed to recede, as if the landscape itself was moving to keep them from us. "This is not natural," Amy said at one point. "We have been walking for an hour, but those buildings do not look any closer." "Keep moving," Dr. Hollies urged. "It is just an optical illusion. The Arctic does strange things to perception." But I wondered if it was more than that. Were we really making progress, or were we walking in place while the supernatural creature toyed with us? At 10:00 a.m., we stopped for a brief rest and to eat some energy bars. As we huddled together against the wind, Kevin suddenly pointed behind us. "The plane," he said, "it is gone." We turned to look. He was right. Our crashed plane had vanished. There was nothing behind us but unbroken white landscape stretching to the horizon. No wreckage, no scars in the snow, nothing to indicate we had ever been there. "That is impossible," Daniel said. "We have only walked an hour. We should still be able to see it." "Unless we have walked farther than we thought," Dr. Holly suggested. "Or unless this place does not follow normal rules of space and distance," I said quietly. No one wanted to contemplate that possibility, but it hung in the air between us like a frozen ghost. We pressed on. By noon, the structures finally seemed to be growing genuinely closer. We could make out more details now. Rectangular buildings with flat roofs, a tall antenna or radio tower, what looked like fuel tanks. It was definitely some kind of installation, though whether it was occupied or abandoned, we could not tell. "Hello," Kevin shouted, his voice echoing across the emptiness. "Is anyone there? We need help." No response came. The installation sat in silence. As we got closer, I felt a growing sense of unease. Something about the place was wrong. The buildings were old, very old, with a style of architecture that belonged to the 1950s or 1960s. Snow had drifted against the walls, some of it piled so high it nearly reached the roofs. No lights were visible in any windows. No smoke rose from any chimneys or vents. "It looks abandoned," Amy said, voicing what we were all thinking. "Maybe," I said, "but it is shelter, and there might be supplies, a working radio, something that can help us." We reached the perimeter of the installation at 1:00 p.m. A chain-link fence surrounded the compound, though large sections of it had collapsed under the weight of snow and ice. A sign hung on the gate, so corroded and weathered that the words were barely legible. "United States Military Installation. Arctic Research Station, Delta 7. Authorized personnel only. Established 1951. 1951, Daniel said. "This place has been here since before Captain Thorne's plane crashed. Maybe his crew was trying to reach this installation when they went down." "If they knew it was here, why did not they just walk to it?" Kevin asked. "Maybe they could not find it," I said. "Or maybe they tried and never made it." We pushed through the broken gate and entered the compound. There were 5 main buildings. A large central structure that looked like barracks or living quarters, 2 smaller buildings that might have been laboratories or storage, a garage or vehicle depot, and what was clearly a communications building with the radio tower rising from its roof. "We should search the communications building first," Dr. Holly said. "If any of the radio equipment still works, we can call for help." We approached the communications building cautiously. The door was not locked, which was either a good sign or a very bad one. Inside, the temperature was only slightly warmer than outside. The building had been abandoned for decades, that much was clear. Dust and frost covered everything. Old equipment lined the walls, radio sets, teletype machines, and other technology from the early Cold War era. Daniel and Kevin immediately set to work examining the equipment while the rest of us searched for anything useful. I found a filing cabinet and started going through documents. Most were routine paperwork, supply requisitions, personnel records, weather reports. But one folder caught my attention. It was labeled Incident Reports, classified. Inside were a series of typed reports, all stamped with red classified markings. I read the first one. Date, November 3, 1951. From Captain Robert Mackenzie, Station Commander. Subject, unexplained phenomena. Third incident this week. Personnel report hearing voices outside the installation after dark. Voices claim to be lost travelers requesting aid. Standing orders remain. Do not respond to external communications after sunset. Do not exit buildings for any reason between 1800 hours and 600 hours. Do not investigate unexplained sounds. Private Thompson violated protocol last night. Opened exterior door to investigate what he described as a woman crying for help. Door remained open approximately 30 seconds before Thompson could be restrained. Upon sealing door, temperature inside building dropped 15 degrees in under a minute. Thompson, now confined to medical bay, shows signs of frostbite despite never stepping outside. Continues to insist the woman is real and needs our help. Refuses to eat or sleep. Repeatedly attempts to return to exterior door. I read the next report. Date, November 15, 1951. From Captain Robert Mackenzie. Subject, personnel loss. Private Thompson deceased. Cause of death, exposure and hypothermia, though he never left the interior of the installation. Medical officer Lieutenant Harris unable to explain how Thompson developed severe frostbite while remaining indoors. Body shows signs consistent with hours of exposure to extreme cold, yet Thompson was under observation the entire time. Phenomena continues. Multiple personnel report seeing figures moving outside windows. Figures appear to be human, sometimes appearing to be members of our own crew. Lieutenant Carson reported seeing himself standing outside, staring in. Morale deteriorating. Request immediate evacuation of non-essential personnel. This station is not safe. There were more reports, each more disturbing than the last. The phenomena had escalated throughout the winter of 1950-11952. Personnel had begun experiencing hallucinations, hearing voices inside their own heads, seeing impossible things. Several more men had died from mysterious causes. By March 1952, the reports became erratic and barely coherent. The last report was dated March 28, 1952. We have sealed ourselves in the barracks. The communications building and laboratories are no longer safe. It can enter buildings now. We see it in the hallways, wearing the faces of our dead friends. Jenkins shot it 3 times. Bullets passed through as if it was made of smoke. Only 12 of us remain. We are running out of food. I have sent 3 men to attempt to reach the supply depot at Point Barrow, but I hold little hope they will make it. This place is cursed. Whatever supernatural creature exists here, it grows stronger each day. It feeds on our fear, our isolation, our desperation. If anyone finds this, do not attempt to winter here. Abandon this station. Burn it to the ground if you can. Some places are not meant for human habitation. Some places belong to things far older than us. If you have come here seeking shelter, I am sorry. You have walked into a trap. The only advice I can give is to keep moving. Do not stay in one place. The supernatural creature cannot follow indefinitely, or perhaps it can. I do not know anymore. I do not know anything anymore except that we are going to die here and there is nothing we can do about it. The report ended there. There were no more entries. Tucker, you need to see this, Daniel called from the other side of the room. I walked over to where he and Kevin were examining one of the old radio sets. The equipment had been smashed, deliberately destroyed. Someone had taken a sledgehammer or similar tool to every piece of communication equipment in the building. They sabotaged it, Kevin said. Every radio, every transmitter completely destroyed. Someone made sure no calls for help could go out. Or in, I said quietly. Maybe they did not want anyone else to find this place. There is more, Daniel said, pointing to the wall behind the equipment. Words had been carved directly into the metal panels. Do not use the radios. It can hear electronic signals. It will come. We stood in silence, absorbing this new information. The installation was not a place of salvation. It was a tomb. Whatever supernatural creature haunted this region had driven the entire station complement mad, killed them, and turned their refuge into another death trap. We need to leave, Amy said, her voice rising with panic. We need to leave right now. Where? Dr. Hollies asked. There is nowhere to go. We are in the middle of the Arctic with no food, no shelter, and no idea which direction to walk. The supernatural creature is here, Amy insisted. Can you not feel it? It is in this place. It is in the walls. We need to leave. It is everywhere, I said, surprising myself with how calm my voice sounded. That is what we have been failing to understand. This entire region is its territory. The plane crash site, the old military installation, probably hundreds of square miles in every direction. We cannot escape by running. It will follow us until we die. So what then? Kevin demanded. We just give up. No, I said slowly, an idea forming. We figure out what it wants. Why does it hunt here? What is it protecting or seeking? Maybe if we understand it, we can find a way to appease it or avoid it. You want to negotiate with a supernatural creature that has killed dozens of people? Daniel asked incredulously. I want to survive, I said, and to do that we need information. This station has records, reports. Maybe there is something here that explains what this thing is and how to deal with it. It was a thin hope, but it was all we had. We split up to search the other buildings, agreeing to reconvene at the barracks in 1 hour. Dr. Hollies and Amy went to search what appeared to be a medical facility. Kevin and Daniel took the supply depot. I took the main barracks building, partly because I wanted to search it and partly because my injured ankle needed rest. The barracks was the largest and most depressing of the buildings. Rows of bunks lined the walls, each with a footlocker at its base. Personal effects were still scattered throughout the room. Photographs of families back home, letters, books, playing cards. The men who lived here had left in a hurry, or they had never left at all. I found more disturbing signs as I searched. Scratch marks on the walls, deep gouges as if someone had clawed at the metal in desperate frenzy. Dark stains on some of the bunks that could have been old blood, and more messages carved into various surfaces. It knows your name before you speak it. Do not look in the mirrors after dark. Jenkins tried to shoot it. The bullets went through. It smiled. We are already dead. We just have not stopped moving yet. In the commander's office at the back of the barracks, I found a journal similar to Captain Thorne's. This one belonged to Captain Robert Mackenzie, the station commander whose name appeared on the incident reports. The journal provided a more personal account of the installation's final months. Mackenzie had been a rational, scientific man thrust into a situation that defied all rationality. Reading his entries, I could trace his descent from skepticism to belief to despair. One entry in particular caught my attention, dated February 14, 1952. Dr. Sterling believes he has determined what we are dealing with. He has been researching historical accounts of Arctic expeditions, indigenous folklore, and paranormal phenomena. His theory is disturbing but fits the evidence. He believes this region is what ancient peoples called a thin place, a location where the barrier between our world and another reality has worn thin or broken completely. The indigenous Inuit have stories about such places, regions they avoid at all costs. They speak of an entity they call Kalupalik in some dialects, though the translations vary. The closest English equivalent would be the one who waits in the cold. According to the legends, this supernatural creature is not truly alive or dead. It exists in the space between, drawn to human suffering and isolation. It feeds on fear and despair, growing stronger the longer it can keep victims trapped in its territory. It can appear in different forms, mimic voices, and even reach into human minds to exploit memories and create hallucinations. But there is one critical detail in the folklore that Sterling believes might be important. The supernatural creature can only manifest fully in places where humans have died in despair. It needs that initial death, that moment of utter hopelessness, to anchor itself to a location. Once anchored, it can begin to expand its influence. Sterling believes this area became a thin place decades or perhaps centuries ago when early explorers died here. Each subsequent death has strengthened the supernatural creature's hold on the region. Our presence here, our fear, our eventual deaths, we are feeding it, making it stronger. The implications are terrifying. If Sterling is right, we cannot kill this thing. We can only hope to escape its territory before it claims us. But how far does its territory extend? 10 miles? 100? Or have we wandered into a region so cursed that escape is impossible? Sterling has proposed a desperate plan. He wants to attempt to starve the supernatural creature by denying it what it wants, our fear and our deaths. His idea is that if we can maintain perfect psychological discipline, no fear, no despair, only calm acceptance of our situation, the supernatural creature might weaken enough for us to escape. I told him it is impossible. We are human. We cannot simply switch off our emotional responses to a life-threatening situation. But Sterling insists we have to try. He says the alternative is certain death. I have authorized his experiment. God help us all. There were no more entries after that date. Whatever Captain Mackenzie's fate had been, he had not lived long enough to write about it. I was about to leave the office when I noticed something strange. There was another door at the back of the room, partially hidden by a filing cabinet. I moved the cabinet aside and found a heavy metal door with multiple locks. Someone had welded it shut from the outside. More words were carved into the metal. "Do not open. Sterling is still in there." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. I pressed my ear against the metal and listened. For a long moment there was nothing. Then I heard it, a soft tapping sound, rhythmic and deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Pause, tap, tap, tap. Pause. Someone or something was inside that sealed room, tapping on the door. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding. Whatever had happened to Dr. Sterling, he was still in there after 70 years, tapping on the door, waiting to be let out. I left the barracks quickly and found the others gathering near the communications building. Their searches had yielded similar findings: evidence of mass hysteria, mysterious deaths, and an installation driven to madness by something they could not fight or understand. "We found bodies in the medical facility," Dr. Holly said, her face pale. 12 men, all frozen solid, all arranged in a circle on the floor. They are sitting up, holding hands like they were conducting some kind of ritual. "Sterling's experiment," I said, explaining what I had read in Mackenzie's journal. They were trying to starve the supernatural creature by suppressing their fear. "Obviously it did not work," Kevin said grimly. "What do we do now?" Amy asked. Her composure was cracking. "We cannot stay here, but we have nowhere to go. The sun is going to set in a few hours, and we have no shelter that is actually safe." Before anyone could answer, we heard a sound that made us all freeze. It was coming from the communications building behind us, the sound of a radio crackling to life. We rushed inside. One of the smashed radio sets was somehow functioning, its speaker emitting bursts of static punctuated by fragmented words. "Hear me, Station Delta 7, anyone receiving." Daniel grabbed the microphone, which had been severed from the radio. He tried to reconnect wires with shaking hands. "Hello? Yes, we can hear you. This is Daniel Fisher. We are survivors of a plane crash. We need immediate rescue. Our coordinates are..." He stopped. He did not know our coordinates. The voice on the radio continued. "Survivors, coordinates recorded. Help is coming. Stay where you are. Do not leave the installation. Help is coming." Then a different voice came through, cutting across the first. "Do not listen. It is not real. The supernatural creature can use the radios. Do not trust." A third voice, this one familiar, Raymond's voice. "Tucker, Daniel, thank God you are getting this message. Jessica and I survived the crash. We have been trying to reach you. We are at another research station 5 miles north of your position. We have heat, food, and a working radio. Leave the installation and head north. We will guide you in." "It is not him," I said immediately. "Raymond is dead. We saw the cockpit sheared off." "But what if he survived?" Amy said desperately. "What if he and Jessica actually made it? We cannot just ignore this." The radio erupted into a cacophony of voices, all talking over each other. Some promised rescue. Some warned us to run. Some begged us to let them inside. And underneath it all, barely audible, was a sound like laughter. Kevin reached over and smashed the radio with the metal pipe he had been carrying. The voices cut off mid-word, and silence fell once again. "Whatever that was, it was not help," he said. We gathered what supplies we could find from the installation, some canned food from the supply depot, additional blankets and some flares, and prepared to leave. The sun was already starting its descent toward the horizon. We had perhaps 3 hours of twilight left before full darkness arrived. "We should stay together in one of the buildings," Dr. Holly suggested. "Seal ourselves in like Thorne's crew did." "You read what happened to Thorne's crew," I said. "Staying in one place is what the supernatural creature wants. It pins us down and wears us out until we break. We need to keep moving." "In the dark," Amy said, "we will freeze to death in hours." "Then we travel as far as we can before dark and make camp," I said. "Use the portable heater and emergency blankets. In the morning, we move again. We keep moving until we either find real help or die trying." It was a terrible plan, but everyone knew it was our only option. As we prepared to leave the installation, I took one last look at the abandoned buildings. Somewhere in those metal structures, 12 men sat frozen in a circle, their failed experiment preserved for eternity. Somewhere, Dr. Sterling tapped on a sealed door, waiting for rescue that would never come. And somewhere, Captain Mackenzie had written his final words, warning future victims about the supernatural creature that ruled this cursed place. We had joined a long line of doomed souls who had made the mistake of crashing or venturing into this region. The question was whether we would be the ones to finally break the cycle. We set out in a direction we hoped was south, using Daniel's compass as our guide. The installation disappeared behind us surprisingly quickly, swallowed by the endless white landscape. Soon, it was as if it had never existed at all. The walking was harder now. We were all exhausted, both physically and mentally. The weight of what we had learned at the installation pressed down on us like the cold itself. We were not just lost in the Arctic. We were trapped in a feeding ground for something that had been hunting humans for possibly centuries. The sun touched the horizon at 5:00 p.m., painting the sky in shades of red and orange that would have been beautiful in any other circumstances. We had maybe an hour of usable light left. We needed to find shelter and set up camp before full darkness arrived. That was when Amy spotted something in the distance. "Look," she said, pointing. "Is that smoke?" We all strained to see. She was right. A thin column of dark smoke was rising into the twilight sky, perhaps a mile ahead of us. "Someone has a fire," Kevin said, hope creeping into his voice. "Real people, real survivors." "Or another trap," Daniel said. "Everything in this place is designed to lure us in." "But what if it is real?" Amy argued. "What if there are actual people there who can help us?" I studied the smoke. It looked genuine, rising steadily and consistently like smoke from a proper fire should. But then again, we had thought the radio transmission sounded genuine too. We had thought Raymond's voice outside the plane wreckage sounded genuine. We investigate carefully, I decided. But we do not split up and we do not let our guard down. If anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. We approached the source of the smoke with extreme caution. As we got closer, we could make out a structure, a small tent or shelter built from tarps and metal poles, with smoke rising from what appeared to be a makeshift stove pipe. "Hello," Dr. Hollies called out. "Is anyone there? We are survivors of a plane crash. We mean no harm." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tent flap opened and a figure emerged. It was a woman, perhaps in her 50s, wearing heavy Arctic gear. She looked as surprised to see us as we were to see her. "My God," she said. "Real people. I thought I was hallucinating again." "Who are you?" I asked, keeping my distance. "What are you doing out here?" "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen," she said. I was a researcher with the Arctic Climate Study Team. Our camp was attacked 3 weeks ago. I am the only survivor." My blood ran cold at her name. Dr. Hollies had specifically told me not to use the names Marcus or Chen or Sarah anywhere in my planning. Yet here was someone claiming to be Dr. Sarah Chen. It was too much of a coincidence. "Attacked by what?" Daniel asked. "I do not know," she said. "Something came in the night. It looked like one of our team members at first, but wrong somehow. It killed everyone. I barely escaped with my life. I have been wandering ever since, trying to find help, trying to stay alive." She gestured toward her tent. "Please come inside. I have a heater running and some food. You must be freezing." Every instinct I had screamed that this was a trap, but I also saw the desperation in my companion's eyes. They were cold, exhausted, and terrified. The promise of warmth and shelter, even a false promise, was almost impossible to resist. "Show us your hands," I said suddenly. Dr. Chen looked confused. "What?" "Your hands," I repeated. "Hold them out where we can see them." She complied, pulling off her gloves and holding out her bare hands. They looked human. 5 fingers, normal proportions, skin that showed signs of frostbite. But something was not quite right. The frostbite pattern was wrong, as if it had been painted on rather than actually suffered. "Tucker, what are you doing?" Amy whispered. "Testing a theory," I said. "Dr. Chen, can you tell me what year it is?" "What? It is 2025. Why are you asking me these strange questions?" "What month?" "October. October 2025. Look, I understand you have been through trauma, but we need to get inside before dark. It is not safe out here after dark." "One more question," I said. "How did you know my name is Tucker? I never told you." Dr. Chen froze. Her expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. Something cold and ancient looked out at us from behind that human mask. "You should come inside," she said, and her voice was subtly different now. Multiple voices speaking in harmony like a choir. "It is warm inside. You can rest. You can stop running." "Back away," I said to my group. "Back away slowly." Dr. Chen took a step toward us. "Why are you running, Tucker? I am trying to help you. We can all survive this together. Just come inside." "You are not Dr. Chen," I said. "You are not human. You are the supernatural creature that has been hunting us." She smiled, and it was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. The smile was too wide, revealing too many teeth. Her eyes reflected the dying light like an animal's eyes, throwing back a pale glow. "Clever," she said in that multi-voiced tone. "Cleverer than most, but it does not matter. You cannot escape. This is my territory and you are already dead. You were dead the moment your plane entered my domain." The figure that looked like Dr. Chen began to change. Her form blurred and shifted like smoke, becoming taller, thinner, more angular. The tent behind her collapsed, revealing nothing underneath. There had never been a tent, never been a fire. Just another illusion designed to trap us. "Run," I shouted. We ran. The thing that had pretended to be Dr. Chen let out a sound, not a laugh, not a scream, but something between the two. A sound of pure malevolent joy. Darkness was falling fast now. We ran through the twilight, stumbling over hidden ice formations, slipping in the snow. Behind us, I could hear the supernatural creature following. Not running, just walking at a steady pace. It did not need to run. It knew we had nowhere to go. "There," Kevin pointed. "Is that a light?" Ahead of us, perhaps a quarter-mile away, was a genuine structure. Not an illusion this time. I could tell because it did not have that strange quality of seeming to shift and move. It was a small emergency shelter, the kind that Arctic research teams set up as waypoints, and there was a light on inside. We pushed ourselves harder, pain and exhaustion forgotten in our desperate sprint for safety. The shelter grew closer. I could see details now. A metal door, small windows, a radio antenna on the roof. We reached the door, and Daniel yanked it open. We tumbled inside and slammed the door behind us, throwing the bolt lock. The shelter was small, maybe 15 feet by 15 feet, but it was heated and stocked with supplies. Emergency rations, medical supplies, sleeping bags, and, most importantly, a working radio. "Is everyone here?" Dr. Hollies asked, counting heads. "Tucker, Daniel, Kevin, Amy. Yes, we are all here." Kevin was already at the radio, desperately trying to raise anyone on the emergency frequency. "Mayday, mayday, this is Kevin Morrison. We are survivors of a charter plane crash. We need immediate rescue. Is anyone receiving?" Static. Then, miraculously, a human voice. Not the multi-toned voice of the supernatural creature, but a genuine human voice with static and distance making it crackle. "Receiving you. Confirm your position, rescue team." "We do not know our exact position," Kevin said, his voice breaking with relief. "We were flying from Anchorage to a weather station near the North Slope. We crashed approximately 3 days ago. We are in an emergency shelter somewhere in the Arctic. We have 5 survivors." "Roger that. Triangulating your signal. Help is coming. Estimated 6 hours. Stay where you are. Do not leave the shelter." 6 hours. We just had to survive 6 more hours and help would arrive. We distributed the emergency rations and ate the first proper meal we had had in days. The shelter's heater filled the space with blessed warmth. For the first time since the crash, I felt something resembling hope. But that hope died when Kevin checked his watch and swore softly. "What is wrong?" I asked. "My watch," he said, tapping the face. "It says it is 3:00 a.m. "That is not possible," Daniel said. "It was barely 6:00 p.m. when we reached the shelter. We have only been here maybe 30 minutes." But when we checked all our watches and phones, they all said the same thing: 3:00 a.m. 9 hours had passed in what felt like 30 minutes. "The supernatural creature," Amy whispered. "It is playing with time, or with our perception of time." A horrible realization struck me. The radio transmission, the voice that said help was coming in 6 hours. How long ago was that? Kevin checked the radio's timestamp. According to this, it was 8 hours ago. "So rescue should be here by now," Dr. Holly said. "Where are they?" As if in answer to her question, we heard the sound of helicopter blades in the distance. They were growing closer. "They are here," Amy cried out. "We are saved." But something about the sound was wrong. I listened more carefully. The rhythm was off, inconsistent. And underneath the sound of blades, I could hear something else. That multi-toned voice, speaking in time with the helicopter sounds. "Coming to save you, coming to bring you home. Open the door and let us in." "That is not a helicopter," I said. "Do not open the door." The sound circled the shelter, the false helicopter noises mixing with other sounds now. Voices calling our names. Promises of rescue and safety. But always underneath, that supernatural chorus that gave it away. The sound stopped directly outside the door. For a long moment there was silence. Then something knocked. 3 measured knocks, polite and patient. "Federal Air Search and Rescue," a voice called through the door. "We are here to evacuate survivors. Open the door so we can get you to safety." "Prove you are real," I called back. "Tell me something only a real person would know. What year is it? What is the name of the current president?" Silence. Then, "The year is 2025. The president is Donald Trump. Now please open the door. The weather is deteriorating and we have a narrow window for evacuation." The answer was correct, but something in the delivery was wrong. Too perfect, too practiced, like an actor reciting lines. "What is the capital of North Dakota?" I asked. It was a random question, but it was all I could think of. Another pause. Then, "Bismarck. Now please, we are running out of time. Open the door." Again correct, but again that sense of wrongness. "If you are real," I said, "then you can wait. We will open the door when we are sure." The thing outside dropped its pretense. The polite voice was replaced by that multi-toned supernatural chorus. You cannot wait forever, Tucker. Eventually, you will have to leave the shelter. Eventually, you will have to trust someone or something. And when you do, I will be there. I have all the time in the world. You have only until your supplies run out. The truth of those words settled over us like a shroud. The supernatural creature was right. We could not stay in the shelter indefinitely. We had maybe 2 days' worth of food and water. After that, we would be forced to leave, forced to take our chances with whatever was waiting outside. We need a plan, Dr. Holly said. A real plan, not just hopping for rescue. The supernatural creature feeds on fear and despair, I said, remembering what I had read in Captain Mackenzie's journal. Dr. Sterling tried to starve it by suppressing those emotions. It did not work for his crew, but maybe we are approaching it wrong. What do you mean? Daniel asked. Sterling tried to eliminate fear, I explained. But fear is a natural human response. You cannot just switch it off, but maybe we can redirect it, use it differently. I do not understand, Amy said. I was not sure I understood either, but an idea was forming. The supernatural creature uses our emotions against us. It shows us things we fear or things we desperately want. It creates illusions based on our psychological states. But what if we could control our psychological states well enough that the illusions do not work? You want us to meditate our way past a supernatural creature? Kevin asked skeptically. Not meditate, I said. Accept that we might die. Accept that rescue might not come. Accept that the supernatural creature is real and powerful. If we stop fighting against those truths, if we stop letting them fill us with fear and false hope, maybe we can think clearly enough to find a way out. That is essentially what Sterling was trying, Dr. Hollies pointed out. No, I said. Sterling was trying to suppress emotion. I am suggesting we acknowledge it and move past it. Feel the fear, accept it, and then act anyway. The supernatural creature cannot feed on fear that we have already processed and accepted. It was a subtle distinction, but an important one. Sterling's crew had tried to become emotionless, which was impossible and drove them mad. I was suggesting we become emotionally honest, which was the opposite. Even if that works, Kevin said, it does not solve our immediate problem. How do we get out of this shelter and to real safety? Before anyone could answer, the lights in the shelter went out. We were plunged into darkness, the only illumination coming from the faint glow of the heater. The generator must have failed, Daniel said, fumbling for a flashlight. But when he turned on the flashlight, we saw something that made us all recoil in horror. The walls of the shelter were no longer metal. They had transformed into ice, translucent and glowing with an inner light. And frozen within the ice, we could see faces. Dozens of faces. Hundreds of faces. All staring at us with frozen expressions of terror. It is in here with us, Amy said, her voice barely a whisper. The supernatural creature is inside the shelter. Stay calm, I said, though my own heart was racing. Remember what we talked about. It is trying to scare us. Do not give it what it wants. The ice walls began to pulse, as if breathing. The faces within shifted and moved, mouths opening and closing silently. Then the walls became transparent, and we could see beyond them into impossible space. We were no longer in the Arctic. We were suspended in nothing, a tiny bubble of reality surrounded by an endless void filled with things that should not exist. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It is not real. We are still in the shelter. This is an illusion designed to break us. Do not look at it. Tucker, I can feel the cold, Dr. Holly said. The temperature is dropping. This is not just an illusion. She was right. I could feel it too. The warmth from the heater was being leached away, replaced by a cold so intense it made the Arctic outside seem tropical by comparison. This was not natural cold. This was supernatural cold, the cold of the void, the cold of death itself. Everyone huddle together, I said. Use the emergency blankets and keep talking. Keep each other grounded in reality. We pressed together, wrapping ourselves in the thermal blankets. The supernatural cold continued to intensify, but human warmth and determination pushed back against it. "Tell me about home," I said to Amy. "Tell me about something real and good." Amy's teeth were chattering, but she spoke. "I have a cat named Whiskers. He is orange and fat and completely useless, but I love him. He sleeps on my bed every night and purrs so loud it keeps me awake." "I have a daughter," Kevin added. "She just turned 6. She wants to be an astronaut. I promised her I would come back from this trip and take her to the Space Museum." "My wife makes the best lasagna in Montana," Daniel said. "I know everyone says that about their wife, but it is actually true. She uses this secret ingredient she will not tell anyone, not even me." "I became a doctor because my little brother died when I was 12, Dr. Holly said quietly. "Pneumonia. I could not save him, but I have saved hundreds of others since then. I am not ready to stop saving people." We went around the circle, each of us speaking about something real, something that anchored us to the world beyond this cursed place. And as we spoke, the illusions around us began to flicker and fade. The ice walls became metal again. The impossible void receded. The temperature stabilized. The supernatural creature could not maintain its assault in the face of our shared humanity. When the lights came back on, we were simply sitting in a small emergency shelter, cold and afraid but still alive. The radio crackled to life again, but this time we ignored it. Whatever voice came through, real or false, we were done trusting anything we could not verify. "What now?" Amy asked. I looked at my companions. We had been through hell together. We had lost friends, faced impossible horrors, and been hunted by something that should not exist. But we were still here, still fighting. "Now we make our own way out," I said. "We wait for true dawn, not the false dawn the supernatural creature might show us, but the real thing. We can tell by watching through the window. When the sun actually rises and we can see genuine daylight for at least 30 minutes, we move. We walk in the direction the compass shows is south. We do not stop for anything we see or hear. We do not split up. We just keep walking until we either find genuine civilization or die trying." "That is not much of a plan," Kevin said. "No," I agreed, "but it is honest, and honesty is the only weapon we have against something that deals in lies and illusions." We spent the remaining hours of darkness in wary vigilance. The supernatural creature tried several more times to breach our defenses. Sounds of rescue helicopters, voices of loved ones, visions of warm buildings just outside. But each time, we recognized the deception and did not fall for it. I will not lie to you, those hours were among the hardest of my life. The temptation to believe the illusions, to accept the false promises of salvation, was almost overwhelming. But we held firm, supporting each other, reminding each other of what was real and what was not. And then finally, true dawn arrived. It was nothing like the false dawns we had seen before. This was gradual and genuine, the sky lightening by degrees until we could see the actual sun rising above the horizon. We watched it for 45 minutes, making absolutely sure it was real before we trusted it. "It is time," I said. We gathered our supplies, checked our equipment, and prepared to leave the shelter. Before we opened the door, I made everyone join hands in a circle. "Whatever happens out there," I said, "we stay together. If one of us falls, the others help them up. If one of us sees something trying to lure them away, the others pull them back. We are not individuals anymore. We are a unit. That is how we survive." "Agreed," they said in unison. I opened the door. The Arctic landscape spread before us, beautiful and deadly in the morning light. Our breath steamed in the cold air. The snow sparkled like diamonds, and somewhere out there, the supernatural creature waited. But for the first time since the crash, I felt something other than fear. I felt determination. We set out walking south, using the compass and the sun to guide us. The first hour passed without incident, then the second. By the third hour, I began to wonder if the supernatural creature had given up, if perhaps daylight truly did limit its power. That was when Kevin suddenly stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" he asked. We all listened. In the distance, faint but unmistakable, was the sound of engines. Real engines this time, not the supernatural imitation. I could hear the distinctive sound of snowmobiles. "Someone is coming," Amy said, hope lighting up her face. "Everyone stay alert," I warned. It could still be a trick. But as the sounds grew closer, I could see them. 3 snowmobiles cresting a ridge, each carrying 2 people in proper Arctic rescue gear. They saw us and changed direction, heading straight toward us. The lead snowmobile pulled up, and the driver removed their helmet. It was a woman in her 40s with weathered skin and kind eyes. "Thank God," she said. "We have been searching for you for 3 days. I am Sarah Mitchell with the North Slope Search and Rescue. Are you the survivors from the charter flight?" I hesitated. The supernatural creature had used names and identities before. How could we be sure this was real? "What is your daughter's name?" I asked suddenly. Sarah Mitchell looked confused. "I do not have a daughter, I have 2 sons. Why are you asking me that?" It was an answer the supernatural creature would not have given. The supernatural creature would have read my mind and given me whatever answer I expected. A real person would simply be confused by the random question. "We are the survivors," I said, and I felt tears beginning to form. "Please tell me you are real." Sarah Mitchell smiled warmly. "I am very real, and we are taking you home." The ride back to the rescue base at Point Barrow took 3 hours. During that time, Sarah explained that our plane's emergency beacon had indeed activated, but the signal had been distorted and intermittent, making it hard to locate us. They had been searching a 100-square-mile area for days. Finding us had been partly skill and partly luck. At the base, we were checked by medical personnel, given warm food and clean clothes, and allowed to contact our families. The relief of hearing my mother's voice, of knowing I was truly safe, was almost overwhelming. Later, after we had been debriefed by the authorities, the 5 of us sat together in a rec room at the base. We did not talk much. We did not need to. We had shared an experience that words could not adequately describe. "Do you think it is still out there?" Amy asked quietly. "The supernatural creature." "Yes," I said. "I think it has always been there and it will continue to be there. Some places on Earth are not meant for human habitation. That is one of them." "We should tell people," Kevin said. "Warn them to stay away from that region." "Who would believe us?" Dr. Hollies asked. "We barely believe it ourselves and we lived through it." She was right. When we had given our official statements, we had stuck to the facts of the crash and our survival efforts. We had not mentioned the supernatural creature, the voices, the illusions. Those details existed only in our memories and in the private journal I am writing now. The official record states that we survived for 5 days in extreme conditions through resourcefulness and teamwork. The bodies of Raymond and Jessica were never recovered, though pieces of the cockpit were found 50 yards from the main wreckage. The military installation Delta 7 was noted in our report, and officials said they would investigate, though I doubt they will find anything. Places like that have a way of hiding themselves when they want to. Before we left Point Barrow to return to our respective homes, the 5 of us made a pact. We would stay in touch, support each other if nightmares or trauma surfaced, and we would remember our lost pilot and co-pilot. But we would also try to move forward, to return to normal life as much as possible. It has been 6 months since the crash. I am back at work in Anchorage, coordinating logistics for research supplies. Amy has returned to her graduate studies, though she has changed her focus from Arctic climate to temperate ecosystems. Daniel and Kevin have both taken positions that keep them far from cold climates. Dr. Hollies continues to practice medicine, though she has started specializing in trauma therapy. We video chat once a month, the 5 of us, just to check in. Sometimes we talk about the experience. Most times we do not. But there is a bond between us that will never break, forged in ice and terror and determination to survive. I still have nightmares sometimes. I dream I am back in that frozen wasteland, hearing footsteps circle my tent, hearing voices that promise salvation while delivering only death. But then I wake up in my warm apartment, surrounded by the sounds of a living city, and I remember that I survived. We all survived. And that matters. If you have listened to this entire story, if you have stayed with me through every terrifying moment, I want to thank you. I also want to remind you one final time. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Share this video with someone who appreciates real accounts of unexplainable experiences. And please, leave a comment telling me what you think. Do you believe places can be inherently evil or cursed? Have you ever experienced something that defied rational explanation? Your stories matter. Your experiences matter. Because here is what I learned in the Arctic. We are not alone in this world. There are things that exist beyond our understanding, things that prey on the lost and the frightened. But we are also stronger than we think. When we support each other, when we refuse to give in to despair, when we hold tight to our humanity even in the face of the inhuman, we can survive the impossible. I survived the Arctic. I survived the supernatural creature that hunts there. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, remember this: stay together. Trust your instincts. Do not believe everything you see or hear. And never ever give up hope, even when hope seems like the cruelest lie of all. My name is Tucker. I am 28 years old, and this is my story of how our plane crashed in the Arctic and how we realized we were not alone. Thank you for listening. And whatever you do, if you ever find yourself flying over the Arctic and something goes wrong, remember what I told you. Remember the rules. Remember that survival is possible, even in the most impossible circumstances. Stay safe out there. And remember, some places are not meant for human habitation. Some places belong to things older and more terrible than we can imagine. Respect those boundaries. This has been my story. I hope you never have to live through one like it. But if you do, I hope my experience helps you survive. Goodbye and stay warm.